has been treacherous. Treacherous. Do you have kids?
Treacherous. I have 3, yeah.
3 kids. Oh, so you know. How
Yeah.
old are they?
Now they're 12, 11, and 9.
Oh, girls or boys?
2 boys and a girl in the middle.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know you have 3 boys. How old are they?
They're 9, 6, and 4.
Don't you love the like math? What?
Yeah.
How old am I? What year is it? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, who had a birthday and whose birthday's coming? And
Yeah.
yeah, it's a big mishmash, and it's so much. But yeah, it was Christmas concert week. So then like the dress rehearsal, and then Christmas concerts, and then Teddy's little junior K one at noon. And I was just like I didn't even, and I love eating, and I didn't even I didn't get to sit down to eat. I just was like grabbing
Right.
and shoving, which we all know is like,
yeah,
you shouldn't get there, but it's that way. So oh, well. Yeah. So tell me about you, and tell everyone about you. I want to know all about what you do.
Sure. Yeah. So I live in a small town in BC, Canada. I am a coach and a counselor. I originally started out, my original career was in environmental health. So I was working as a health inspector and I didn't really love it. And then when my second kid came along, she was really like needed a lot from me as a mom. So I was like, who's ever going to take this kid and take care of her? Like, there's no daycare in our town. So
Oh,
I quit that
no.
job. Yeah, I quit that job and was home with like a toddler and a baby because they were 16 months apart. Yeah, sorry, we're going like life story here. Is that
Go
okay?
for it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. So I'm at home and I started writing about my firstborn's delivery because it was an emergency C-section. And I felt like it was a really traumatic situation for me as a mom. And I couldn't find anyone to talk to about it. Like I was reading Yahoo support groups at the time. That's what we had then. And there wasn't really anyone talking about it. I was talking to like other moms and they didn't have that experience. And so a nurse, actually, a public health nurse said, you should just write out what you're going through. And I'm like, well, if I need it, maybe someone else needs it. So it made me start a blog. For some weird reason, I just decided I'm going to post this. And I
I
just
was going to
started
say
blogging about
blogging
life.
times then.
Yeah, it was blogging times because that's where I was going too, right? For this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I started blogging and that turned into just finding my voice. Like I had a voice, I had things to say. I never thought I did. It was really fun and exciting. And then I went through this process where I decluttered my whole house. Like I realized I was really living with a lot of stuff. And that turned into the blog being about like minimalism and intentional living. I got trained as a coach, I got trained as a counselor. And so that's like up to speed. That's where we're at today. And that was the journey to get here.
Yeah. No, I like that. And people need it. And people need not just like one reminder, but consistent and constant reminders of like habits they can pick up and little tricks or like a way to get through their day, just like anything
Yeah.
like to hold on to. So what are some of the topics that you love specifically to support people on?
Oh, that's such a good question. Well, I guess decluttering and minimalism, it's kind of like a language that I speak because I've done it for so long. But I really love helping moms like um, find out how to deal with their feelings. Like emotional intelligence is really important, where they get more awareness of how their emotional experience is impacting the experience of their life, and maybe get tools, especially with stress, especially with overwhelm, to feel like they can handle that instead of most of us think if we're stressed, we're doing it wrong, or if we're overwhelmed, we're it's too much, and we tend to make things harder than they need to be. Like we make hard things harder. So that's something that I think is a really good foundation to pay attention to, and then to get excited about your life. Like that's the next thing. We can work on all of the places that you feel stuck and worn out, but like what are we going to replace that with? Let's get excited. And that's kind of the intentional living piece. And to me, that's really helping women identify their values, what's important to them, specifically them, and not what they've been told has to be important to them or should be important to them. We're often living by values that are handed down to us from our parents or our culture, or we're so out of touch with what is important to us. What do we want, like as a woman? Like, what do I want as a woman or a mom? And so really doing the work of getting excited about what you want in life and owning that.
Mm-hmm. So empowering women, but like getting to the root of like their day, I guess. I always know in the
Yeah.
calendar what's to come. Like I'm like, that's gonna be a rough go right there. I know it's
Yeah,
coming. And it doesn't help. It doesn't help me like get through
I know.
it. You're like, this is just kind of, and you're like, and I'm like, I know I'm being a jerk too. I was like,
Yeah,
like yesterday I was a
right.
super jerk. And I knew it was gonna come because when I don't, and that's the thing, just like what you talked about, is when I don't, because I have figured out my passions and my values, and like I fight
Mhm.
really hard to um, for my time with those, because it is an adjustment in society still today, for people to be like my husband, for example, like his dad started a business. No one ever questioned him on that. No one ever said,
Right.
wow, you should be spending more time with your kids at home. Should you really think about starting that business? Like, I think it's a little too
Right.
much for you to handle, actually. Like, no
Mhm.
one ever said that to him or my husband, or like my husband has 3 kids too. Like,
Yeah.
that we should, but it has been like, I definitely have had to like point out the equality issue several times, and it's like, and he is very present, so it's nice that we handle. And I watch my language, and we talked about that on one of our podcasts with Jill Kelly. But I like, yeah, 2 days ago, yeah, I was like being like, uh I almost said like my kids
Mm,
ready in the morning. I was like, they are
yeah.
so I was just like, even my own
Yeah.
language was like, something that I fight so hard against. And so I was like, getting our children to school is a, task
Mm.
for both of us to whatever. I did not say it like that because I was yelling something else. But yeah, so when I don't get that time or get to like set aside that time for myself and my passions and what I really want to
Mhm.
thrive doing, because I feel like everyone needs that sense of purpose. That's why we're here. And it does go
Yeah.
beyond motherhood. But you know
Right?
what? Some of my
Yeah.
friends they're like, I just love to do mumming. But really, they're
Mm.
kind of like, I would always,
Mhm.
anyway, they're,
Yeah.
yeah, not many. They're like, I'm fucking tired,
Like, through
actually.
and through. Yeah. Yeah, and it's
Mhm.
such a cultural thing, right? I think we're on a really exciting time culturally where we are really embracing the equality within a family unit that our parents never had to. Like, if you think of your parents, I think of my parents, and they still had those typical gender roles and expectations. Like, my mom, she developed early onset dementia. My dad started taking care of her, and that was an interesting thing to see him sweeping and vacuuming and making meals when for so many years that wasn't his role. But now with modern like family units, there's an expectation that the dads are involved, the dads play with the kids, they're not babysitters, like we are bringing the standard up to here. And it feels like a really tricky time for us to all navigate it. Like how we notice the differences, we notice the contrast between who's doing what in the family, and especially as women we notice, like, god, my husband's like, oh, I went to the dentist, scheduled something in the Google Calendar, and they were so impressed that I was using the Google Calendar. And I was sitting
Fuck.
on the couch with one of my girlfriends, and we're like, well, good
God.
for you. Like, no one's saying, oh, look at that mom with her Google Calendar, she's
Yeah,
such a good mom.
absolutely not. My
Yeah.
friend sent me like a reel of a dad painting with his kids, and it was like 25 million views. And I was like, just so you know, like, I all my posts are me painting with my
Yeah.
kids for the last decade. No one cares.
Right.
But
Right.
this one dad painter,
Yeah,
let
what a
his
good dad.
baby touch his painting. Yeah, he is amazing. Like, he is a
Yeah.
phenomenon, apparently. But
It's so
with
true.
your dad and your parents' dynamic, that was out of necessity. And I feel like
Mhm.
now, with the way of like balancing time, it is out of necessity. Like,
Mhm.
we are both business owners. My goal was to
Yeah.
surpass his yearly annual income, and I finally did it. So both our businesses are
Yeah.
very important, and they support our home. And like, his did more when I was like little kids. Like, my last one's
Mhm.
4, which I still consider, like, I still have little kids. and
Yeah. Yeah.
so we're just getting out of that stage. So like, I have a little. I actually, no, I don't have time. I make time. I don't have time. I make so much time to do what I do because
Yeah.
I just have very important goals, and that is okay. But it is out of necessity in this time that everyone needs to pitch in. You know where um wherever you want, really. I feel like the
Mm.
first year of living together is like setting those boundaries of like, I really garbage grosses me out. How about that's your
Yeah.
job? Or, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
what
totally.
advice would you give for someone who is like, and this is okay, one more thing. Melinda Gates's book is so good. I think it's called Moment of Lift. She has statistical data from 20 years. So come on, Gates. They have data.
They got it.
Right? They've got accurate data. Women have, in different parts of the world, 30 to 60% more unpaid labor than men. So unpaid labor,
Mm.
as in unpaid labor, things you're not
Childcare,
getting paid
cooking,
for,
cleaning. Yeah.
accounting in the home, whatever it is,
Mhm.
right? Like, yeah, cooking and cleaning, which
Mhm.
that takes up a lot of time because that's all that humans do.
Yeah.
They live and they eat. So,
Yeah.
and yeah, so I feel like there's a period of adjustment, and we're kind of all
Mhm.
navigating it. Is there any tips for a partnership to like try to figure out that?
Mhm. Yeah, and most people are gonna call it the mental load, right? The amount of stuff that the manager of the home has in their head, like, who has to go where? What do they need to bring? Are we out of toilet paper? What are we eating? Like, all of that is, like, mentally cluttering our brains, and
Yeah.
if you can feel it, like, you feel the tension in your head and in your shoulders and your neck, like, it's just so much. So if one thing that helps me personally when I'm feeling like that overwhelm is to write it all down, like to just brain dump it. But as far as the partnership goes, I think it's a really interesting question to ask yourself. How did you decide who does what? Who, like, when you started living together, did you sit down and have a conversation? Generally, no, we don't sit down and have conversations. People just plunk themselves into roles and kind of like pick up on the cues of someone else about what's going to get done. And then we try to send a lot of cues about what needs to get done without actually communicating what we would like support with or what we don't want to do or what we do want to do. And I think that's when you realize that you kind of set things just on default, on autopilot, and now you're frustrated with it, it's not working for you, that you
Mhm.
don't have to be mad about it. You can just say, all right, we've never actually talked about this as a couple, who does what. And if you bring in more kids into the family system needs to be reorganized. Like, we need to have another conversation when we have another kid, or there's a change that happens. You change your work hours, you go to school. Like, we need to have another conversation, revisit. When I started going to school a few years back, it was a kind of a time where my husband works a week on, he's home for a week, and it was a commitment that we made as a family that when he's home for the week, he does it all. I don't have responsibilities. I work during the day, the evenings are for school, and he's gonna take care of, the cooking and the cleaning for that week. And then when he's gone for the week, it's back on me. But we had to have that conversation because it was going to be a big adjustment. And I mean, it's not always easy. It's not always pretty because Like some people are still stuck in those traditional roles of what they grew up seeing, of what they expect their partner to be doing and what they expect themselves to be doing. And if they don't have awareness that they're relying on that template that they grew up with, and they think that that's what's normal and expected, and their partner thinks something different, like that has to be a conversation as well.
Yeah, I love that. I really like what you said about mental load and clutter in the brain. And why I kind of reached out to you was I was just losing it. No, I'm just kidding. No, I saw you had commented something nice about my art, which was so great. Thank you. And then I that was the first time I noticed you. That's just how social
Yeah.
media works. And then I was like,
I know,
oh,
totally. Yeah.
I am feeling so overwhelmed right now. I would love a chat with Shawna. And I feel like if I'm feeling this, everyone else is probably feeling this way at this particular point in the year as well. When, you know, it shouldn't be so hard all the time. But when we are feeling that mental load, and I took my like body massager and took an hour of, and everyone knows on my podcast, I like share everything, but in a totally, but finally I was like, my husband's like, because we kind of like, it's like Thursday or Friday is our time together, our intimate time. And which we've talked about lots on my podcast with like pleasure coaches and stuff. Yeah, Darcy is so great. She brought on toys last time. So everyone knows that like we have like a lead up to that. But this morning or that morning, I was like, there's absolutely no way. And I had like the whole concert, school, work, online stuff. Like it was like, there's no way that was happening. But then he took my other two to like I did it again. Our other two kids to the concert, and then I put Teddy to bed. And then I didn't realize how tense I was. So I had a nice warm bath, and I used my body massager and like worked out and then by the time he got home, he put our other two kids to bed. And then I was like, I'm fine. And I'm fine because I took an hour and a half to myself, got relaxed, and I'm ready. Yes. And it was amazing.
Yeah, right?
And I felt it was 1.5 hours of self-care time of like just not, and it helps your relationship. It helps you to reconnect. It helps yourself. You don't even need to add the sex part after.
Right.
I mean, like, it's that would have been happy with that. It was a perk. And that releases endorphins too. And it connects you with your partner. So do you want to talk about, you mentioned like writing it out, but tips on like your whole every advice on, because people will just, they need it right now.
Yeah, on the overwhelm. The overwhelm, is that what you mean?
Yeah, with holidays coming up, everyone's like, oh, I need to get that, and I need to go here, and I need to order that, and I need to wrap this, and I need to get the kids to that, and like it's insane.
It is insane. And when you were describing like it's one of those days where it was so busy, that's going to be my day to day. And I'm like plotting and planning, and then maybe I'll go to the grocery store there, and then maybe I'll pick up fruit because I have to make a fruit salad tomorrow, all of these things. And I know I'm going to be eating like Lara bars today, and that's going to be my day. It's going to not be pretty at the end of the day. I'm going into it with eyes wide open. It is, right?
It's hard to be present.
Yeah. And I think it's an interesting thing to bring into a conversation like this is our window of tolerance. And that's like a window where we feel like we have capacity and we feel like we can handle things. You know, when you feel I'm good, I'm in a good place, and your kids do something crazy and you're like, of course they did something crazy, like they're kids. But if you're out of your window of tolerance, you're like lose it, right? And then you feel gross as a mom and all of this stuff. So we have this window of tolerance where we can just handle things, but there's things that push us out of the window of tolerance. Not sleeping, not feeding our bodies, like not nourishing ourselves, emotional stress, grief that we haven't dealt with, physical symptoms, any kind of illness. all of these things can push us out. Like if we go up above the window of tolerance, we're hyper aroused and we are getting things done and we're snapping and we're like just a lot of frenetic energy that's really reactive. And we're just trying to like deal the best way we can. And then what often happens is we're up here, we're doing all the things, and then we crash and we go to hypo arousal where we tend to shut down a little bit. We kind of numb out. This, you might see yourself just like on the couch scrolling. And it's pseudo rest. It's not actually rest. You say I'm being still, but you're not actually refreshing yourself. Like the example you had of going and just like relaxing your whole entire body intentionally, like mindfully. That's actual rest, right? That is self-care. That is taking care of yourself, but not like self-comfort where we just tuned out and we just need to do something that's going to distract us or make us think that we're doing something we enjoy. And generally we turn to the phone, right? It's so easy. It's designed for that. And we lose time on the phone and then we end up feeling even worse. Like, what am I doing with my life? Look at my screen time hours. So the overwhelm, I think it's really good to pay attention where you are on this window of tolerance. Are you in your window of tolerance? Are you above it and you're starting to get like stress response, kind of like that flight or fight, or are you going down into the freeze? I think those are really important things. And most of us aren't paying attention to how we're feeling throughout the day. We only really pay attention when it gets big, when it gets too much. And that's like a step one with most people that I work with, men or women, is paying attention, checking in with yourself throughout your day. I would recommend people set timers on their phones even. And when I had all my kids at home, because they were really close together, they were like all 3.5 years together. The
Oh
there
my
was times
gosh.
of day where I was like, "Are you okay?" I
It
need
was
to
a
like
crash every day,
shut up.
probably. I remember crashing every day at 3. Like, there was
3
no
yes.
yeah, there was
Yeah.
no, like, "Maybe I'll take care of myself better," and it was always 3
Yeah.
o'clock. Like,
Yeah.
I was like, "I'm done."
Which is then you're like dinner and now what? So it's just so, and that was the time of day. It's so interesting you say that because at 3 o'clock I started every day going into my bedroom for 5 minutes and just listening to like a meditation of some kind. 5 minutes. I had to check in with myself. And I started just adding it more. Like I'd be having the kids in the tub and I would stop and I would like just check in with my body. Like that was just a habit cue. Like when the kids are in the tub and you're like sitting here watching them, check in with yourself. And I would be like, what do I need? I'd always ask myself, what do I need right now? Do I need to go to the bathroom? Because we don't even like mentally check in that we're hungry or we have to go to the bathroom. Like we're like a head and then there's the body and we're not connecting the two anymore. And so all of these emotions, because emotions live in our bodies, right? All these emotions are like swirling around and piling up and trying to get our attention. And then finally they get so big and we're like, oh, it's so overwhelming. And now I'm paying attention. But if we do it a little bit sooner, check into those super low level emotions, like you can get there. You can get there where you can be like, I'm feeling a slight irritation right now, and it's making me act in this way because that emotion, it's gonna keep talking to you until you pay attention to it, really.
Mhm. That's why I
Mhm.
loved nursing. I loved nursing because,
Ah,
like, at, like, busy, like, dinners or whatever, I'd be like, "Oh, the baby needs to eat. I gotta go to the
yes,
dark."
yes.
Like,
Yeah.
I wasn't afraid to nurse in front of people, but I also just loved that, like, quiet room, dark room with the sound machine on. Like, it was
Yeah,
amazing. I feel like everyone
yeah.
should find their dark room with the sound machine. Or today I know I have to rock out like an intense amount of editing and computer work. So I'm like, you make sure at 2:30 you go on a little, like a 15-minute walk. Nothing crazy.
So good.
Just go walk. I
Mhm.
went running
Yeah,
already, but like I know I need that check-in. And then I'm traveling to a hockey tournament and the kids
right?
are home from school. And it's
Yeah,
like it's gonna be, but like I have to like get work done before I go. So I'm like, make sure you just like walk and go get
so
the kids
good.
from school
Yeah,
and chill the
yeah.
F out because we don't want to have a yesterday occurrence again. And I'm excited because I only am taking one of our kids on the weekend.
Oh,
And one of the
nice.
moms is like, I have to go by myself. And I was like, I can't wait to go by myself.
Yeah, that's the dream.
Like, yeah, like one
Yeah.
kid dream. And I
Easy.
actually
Yeah.
do a lot of work trips alone, which I too
Mm,
really love, like that are happening uh now. And it is hard for people to get used to. Like I've been like questioned, like,
mm.
what are you doing? And I'm like, my husband leaves like on 7 Oiler game like
Right.
nights a year. Like I can go for work and or
Yeah.
even if it wasn't for work, I can go book a hotel at like a city 2 hours away because I too live in a kind of smaller-ish place and go out for a nice
Mhm.
dinner and then come home totally recharged and like
Yeah.
normal again. And it's
Yeah.
those moments like I love like checking back in a day. Like you have to do that upkeep like all the time as a routine
Mhm.
sort of um habit that you can just work in. And I read a book every morning to remind me to be present.
Mm.
Like with my oatmeal and my
Wow.
tea, like I'm like, read your book so you get reminded of that. But and it's
Mhm.
funny because it's a money mindset book, but it has like advice about being present, and I love it.
Sounds
But
good, yeah.
overall, I feel like you should treat yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, and like Brandy, what made you give yourself permission to do that? Because I know from working with women that that is a sticking point. Like, if I, it's selfish, or like I have to do all these things. I'm a martyr. Like, it's so great that you have all of those habits in place. But like, what made you? What helps you do that?
Um, I'm so stubborn.
Sorry.
I am like the most
Yeah.
stubborn person. So is my partner and husband. He is very stubborn too, but I win for most stubborn in the house, and all my children are stubborn. So you could see how like the dynamic of our home is like uh no one wants to do something anyone else has asked ever.
Oh my
But
god.
I yeah, like it's just it's part of I think self-worth. I would say like
Mm.
I've done probably 6 years of I and honestly it was the money mindset books for self-worth.
Oh,
Um, that first of all, I deserve to thrive in my business and I deserve money. And in order to be my best self and to help others, because I really love giving back. Um, and 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 that helps with growth too. But like
mm,
it's like i I love going out for dinner and I can't do
mm.
that here because we have kids and I can't eat really anywhere here because I have a ton of intolerances. And I just it's just like I really love doing it. And in order to number one afford to be able to go out for a night, like that's probably
Mhm.
like with hotel like
Mm, right.
$500 for sure, or gas like
Yeah.
$700, right? Like
Right, yeah.
so it's like I deserve it. I want to. And usually I throw some work in there because I love what I do so much that I'm really
Mm,
actually obsessed with it. So I think it comes back to what we said in our earlier in the conversation is like identifying your values and what you want. And I want to paint murals and I want
mhm.
to, have business meetings and I want to show in the gallery and have an opening. So then I also get to go out for dinner and stay in a nice hotel because it's a
Yeah.
write-off. Like I
Yeah.
love that two birds, one stone thing. Like
Mm,
I want to go mural around the world and Europe or whatever, and I'll get
yeah.
to go on a cool trip. And my last trip, I bid on a trip to Montreal while I got flown by another company. Like I want to grow and do these things. And if I don't have that time, if I didn't have that drive, and I think it's a really good example for your children, I'm not happy. Like I'm not
Mm,
my
mm,
best self. You're not your best self
mhm.
if you're not number one, like self-care, like that. Oh, have you seen sorry, I have a little bit of a brain that jumps around, but the
Let's
Stutz
go, yeah.
documentary, Stutz, the pyramid, I love
Yes.
that as like a visual example of
Mm,
in order for me, So he has like 3 tiers in the pyramid, like self-care and like just like surviving. And
Yeah.
like that's down here. If you're not taking care of yourself and simply like, so that comes with knowledge about food and moving your body and mindfulness. And like I worked really hard in that area, so hard, in order for the other stuff to like grow and, you know, be your best personal self.
Yeah.
I feel like that was like the tip of the pyramid, was the tip of the iceberg in that documentary. Like they just, you know, showed some of the stuff that works. As you know, as a counselor, like there's so much more to it. And of course they didn't
Right.
talk about a woman's mind at all. So
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's a bit more jumpy aroundy and like multifunctional, as in like how many things, like I'm thinking while I'm talking to you, you know, and
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
and not many people are capable of doing both. I'm barely capable of it. Anyway, yeah, do you want to talk about like an example of your own example in your practice for that sort of same concept? Because I have my own concept in my book and I call it building blocks of the foundation of growing into who you are.
Oh yeah. I just love that you shared that, because I think it's so inspirational to see a woman who's like, this is my passion. This is what I'm called to do. I'm going to seek it out. I'm going to make goals around it. And your goals are specific. Your goals are like empowered by your bigger vision. So often we're like, oh, I need to like change my life. I'm just going to run a marathon. And that's a goal that someone sets, but doesn't satisfy the big picture that they actually have for their lives, because they probably don't know the big picture that they have for their lives. And that's so important, right? Like, where are we going? Where am I going? Where am I taking myself? What's my destination? Where do I want to be going with everything? So important to get really specific, because when you're specific on your big vision, you can start habits that are going to move you there, projects, and you're more likely to give yourself permission to do those things. And so like the pyramid thing, there's like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs and stuff, and the basic is like the basics of survival. And as moms, we're probably like, what are my needs? What do I really need? I don't need time away. I don't need to exercise. I don't really need to eat. I'm just going to drink protein shakes and substitute actual real food with the liquid. Like, we're betraying our actual physical needs. We're downplaying them. And for what, right? Like, that's the interesting question. Where did you learn that? Where did you learn how to meet your needs? Where did you learn what your role is as a mom? What's okay for you to ask for? What is a valid need? What constitutes a need? If you grew up hearing like, oh, that doesn't matter, or you don't get that or something, it's really hard to say, okay, yeah, that's wrong. Like, I actually have that need. It's a real need. Like, I validate my body's need for 3 meals a day or something like that, or time away. Like, I validate that for myself. I think the passions part, sorry, I'm going to go all over the place too. I think the
Do it.
passion part of motherhood is interesting, because we're told that we can pursue our passions if we make money or if it serves other people. Like, what about a mom who just wants to do something on a Sunday? Like, me and my daughter during COVID, we would bring out all of the stuff and cover the tables, and we would paint on a Sunday. I'm not like, no one's buying my paintings. I'm not starting an Instagram, like, none of that. You feel the pressure
No.
to, right? You feel like, oh,
Yeah.
if I'm
Should I
gonna
blog
produce
about this
something.
all?
Should I blog? Can I make this content? Can I Instagram this?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the whole other side, right, of being online. It's, you feel like your whole life has to be content. But as a mom, to just experience the joy of being mediocre at something and just doing something because it feels like you're in a flow, like you're passionate about it. It brings you presence. Like, art brings you so much presence, music, painting, like nature, like that calls you in, it draws you in. You have to be present with that kind of stuff. So that can be an uncomfortable situation as well. But back to the basic needs. When we are sleeping, like, if you've had a baby and your
Oh my
sleep
gosh, sleep
suddenly
is like
disrupted,
number one. Like
it's number one,
number
right?
one.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
absolutely, it should be your number one goal every day. Like,
Yeah.
there's
To sleep
nothing
well.
this, like, seriously, like, you can go temporarily insane if you don't sleep. Or
It's true. Yeah.
I want data, and I wonder if anyone's done this. Sorry to interrupt you, because I
Yeah,
know
go.
you have more to say on this, but I want data of, because we have time change, right?
Mhm.
I want data around when they shift that, because every year people get so sick. First of
Mm.
all, it's Halloween, so that doesn't
Ah.
help. The sugar.
Right.
But then they
Yeah.
change the fucking time. And then
Yeah.
everyone gets sick for like 3 to
Mm.
4 weeks. Like everyone. You could just
Yeah.
like look at school absences. Like you could just pick up that data, like, or hospital increase in sicknesses. Like
Mhm.
it would be quite easy to pick up the data on every year when the time changes. What happens? And the government should stop, because
The
it
government
happens
should
every
stop the time change.
year. You even have to
Yeah.
ask a nurse, a teacher, or a parent, and they'll know, like, no,
Mhm.
every year. That's a terrible time of year.
Yeah.
Well, stop
It is
changing
a
the
terrible, yeah.
time and adjusting
Yeah.
everyone's cycles, because it throws everyone off,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
I'm on that team too. Like, let's do away with it. And I know there's some data about like when we're inside more and it's winter, like just from my health inspector days, that when we're inside more and the air isn't fresh and we're sharing all of these spaces, hand washing, and so I
Of
think that's
course.
just double like a layer on there that if the daylight was different, would we be outside more? You know, if we had the opportunities to be outside when we're actually awake, we're not like up at maybe some of us are up at 5 or 6 in the morning, and the time changes for morning people, I think, not for like people who
I
don't want to
think
get
it's
up that
for
early.
farmers. They're like, our kids have to
Old
wait for
farmers.
us in the dark. I was like, is that the only reason we change the time, is so the kids don't have to get them some flashlights? Like,
Totally.
like
Yeah,
they'll
that'd be
love
fine.
it. They'll
Yeah.
play with their flashlights while they wait for the bus. You
Yeah.
know, is that the only
Yeah, and
reason?
then they
Because
can
I
come
feel
home
like
in the
it's not a
daylight.
legitimate argument. And I see it a lot still. My kids don't want to wait for the
Mm.
bus in the dark. I was like, that, so the whole country, except for what, Saskatchewan? And that's where all the farmers are.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I know.
Even they know. Anyway,
Yeah,
yeah.
it feels
But
archaic.
I feel like September's that time almost, like where we're all inside again. And that's the
Right? Back to
sick
school.
time. And November, we've
Yeah.
already, so it's just, it's something else, and it needs to stop big time. Yeah. But sleep is number one priority. I
Mhm.
had a whole chapter in my book. My husband is like a steady mental, like I'm the one who's like, passionate, we'll call it.
Yeah.
Expressive, exuberant, argumentative. Yeah. So headstrong. That's a good word for that.
It's a good
My
word, yeah.
husband is very steady. And the birth of our third, so he carried on with like thinking he could like watch hockey, play hockey at night, like do whatever he wanted till 1 a.m, get up again at 6 or 7 for work. And by our third child, and we were getting up a ton, he had like a snap, and and he was
Mm.
grieving, you know.
Oh.
And like around that time, like you feel those feelings again when you don't you least expect it, and they come in waves.
Mm.
And he had like a mental snap where, and still like he's just coming out of it. So our third born is 4 now.
Yeah.
So he's just coming out of sleep anxiety, because it would be like a cycle of like, I'm not falling asleep, and then I'm worried I'm not going to get
Right.
enough sleep. Right.
Oh, totally.
So
Yeah.
sleep can like affect your whole mental being. And then yeah, he had to get a little bit of Ativan to help. Like it's just like
Mhm.
it's insane. So like get into that habit of like your window of bedtime. I feel like,
Mhm.
when do you, because I remember a time where I would like go past 10:30 or 11:30 when the kids were still getting up a lot, and I would get like restless legs all night if I didn't hit
Mm.
that
Yeah.
sleep window, right? So sleep is
Yeah.
like number one. And then I would say like getting outside and
Mhm.
or moving your body in any particular way is number two, which
Yeah.
is hard for Canadians, but hey, I do it all year. And I live in one
Yeah.
that like mine is up north, like obviously. where
Yeah.
they like really can't. They do though, but like it's like different.
Yeah, it's impressive.
But like
Yeah.
if I can get outside in minus like 35 or 47 degrees Celsius, you guys can put on some gear and go even sledding with your kids is exercise, and
Oh,
walking
it's
with
so
them
fun.
and
Yeah.
getting like, yeah, super fun. Well, we have no snow. I don't know about you guys.
You don't still? Oh, we got
We
snow here
still,
yesterday.
it's a
Yeah.
phenomenon because
Oh.
last year at this time they had already hauled away snow hills from our crescents, like that
Mm,
people had piled up with bobcats. So they had
crazy.
already cleaned like a round of snow out like 2 weeks ago. It would have been at this. Yeah. And now we have
Mm,
none. It's odd. I don't want to talk about it because it's
yeah.
depressing. But
Right. Yeah.
sledding with your children and like making that. I even took my muraling harness. We had like a tiny little, like a little blanket that if we could GT, I put on my muraling harness and hooked up the GT and went walking with them hooked up to my
Oh my
harness. And
gosh.
like
That's
I was like,
crazy.
I'm a snow
Yes.
dog. And like they loved it. They thought it was so
Yeah.
funny. So you can make it fun, and you can make it just for you too, to sneak out for a little quick loop and
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is. Or if you're in a city, walk to your favorite coffee shop, anything to
Mm-hmm.
get anything to take care of yourself. Yeah. What's your advice around that?
Yeah. There's something about moving your body, about that, especially walking, about that forward motion where all of the emotion, because emotions are a biological response. We have emotions for a reason. Every emotion is trying to tell us something, it's an indicator. And our job is to listen to that emotion and respond to it in a healthy way. Usually, we've been modeled the unhealthy ways of responding to our emotions. So, responding to our emotions, like I'm feeling overwhelmed. There's unhealthy ways to respond to overwhelm, but then there's healthy ways, and movement can often be one of them because even just the forward motion of moving your body forward, your body is like, okay, we're doing something about this. And that can just help process emotions. It's so underrated. And I hate having to tell other moms, like, how active are you? That's really important to your mental health. There's so much science about what happens when we contract our muscles and the chemicals that are released. Like, there's so much science around it, but no one wants to hear, like, oh, you should just move more and you'll feel better, because it's not that simple, right? But it does really, really, really help. It's been one of the most like devastating things for me to learn is, oh, I have to actually exercise to feel better. But now I turn to it, and another part of that is you create a new pathway in your brain, because we are dopamine seeking. We want things that make us feel better, that give us that sense of reward. And if exercise doesn't naturally give you that sense of reward, if it's like, ugh, and all of this heavy emotion attached to it, you know that there's no like reward pathway made for it. But if you're someone who's like, no, exercise makes me feel better, like I want to do it, I prioritize it, you know you've created that pathway. You know you've done the hard work of being uncomfortable, of not really doing what you wanted to do. And there's a really good book called The Finnish Way, and it talks about this word called sisu, which is a Finnish word for just having that like grit and endurance. And they contrast being in a cold weather culture and doing things like winter swimming and gearing up and getting outside, and how it doesn't stop them. They just manage it. They prepare themselves. They dress for it. They go out anyway. And then sometimes in our North American culture, we can be like, oh, it's too cold to go outside. And we start to like stay comfortable. Just stay comfortable, stay still. And we're not really helping ourselves then, right? So exercise, it is so important. Just movement. And I don't
It's
think
like
like
a
exercise like an
hibernation of
hour.
depression every year,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's like hibernation season. And I think there's something beautiful about like getting cozy and enjoying that, but also knowing like I still need to move my body, even 10 minutes. Like I bought a $30
Yeah.
treadmill
I'm
on
talking about a
Facebook.
1 hour spin
No.
class, and then you're
Yeah,
so tired after that you can't do the rest of your day. Like,
totally.
or
Yeah.
like signing up for that, whatever. It's just like nothing, like little
Yeah.
tiny
Keep it
anythings.
simple. Yeah. Keep it like fun, simple. Like, can you put on one song and have a dance party for 3 minutes solid? Like, just start where you're at. Don't expect yourself to get a gym membership and go to the gym
Is
3 times a week
it
for an hour.
time of year? those like unrealistic, only stick to you for like
Yes.
15 to 30 days things. You're
Yes,
like, I
totally.
surely, if I buy that, I will
I will
definitely
do it.
start showing up. Like, or
Yeah.
yeah, you said you got a treadmill?
Yeah, it was like $30. There's parts of it that don't work, but the parts that do work are the parts I need, you know? And it's in my basement. I put a show on the iPad, 20 minutes, you know? I don't even have to run. I just, like, walk at a good pace. I feel the sweat. That's a weird thing because I had never been, like, physically active for a lot of my life. A lot of my self-care was born out of the desire to not develop dementia like my mom has. It was really fear-based at the time. Like, I would be running on the treadmill and just, like, "Oh, I can't let this happen to me," or prioritizing sleep. And it's definitely gotten to a place where this is more about just caring for my body and appreciating myself for caring for my body and how I feel after. But that was my initial motivation was I had to read the science, I had to know how to prevent dementia, so I was focusing on food, I was focusing on sleep, I was focusing on exercise. But that actually helped me establish these things in my life. So I'll just go down, you know, like a good 20-minute walk is great. And that just it gives you a sense of ownership. When you do things that take care of you, when you physically do something with your own body, you feel like, okay, I'm the one in control here. Like I don't have to live my life on autopilot, just reacting to everything and everyone else. Like I'm proactive. I'm doing the things to take care of me because no one else is going to take care of you. No one else is going to like spoon feed you soup and tuck you into sleep. Like, sorry, no one else is going to get you out for a walk. As parents, we do that for our kids. Self care is really parenting ourselves in a way.
Mhm, mhm.
Mhm.
And that's why I don't advocate for getting a pet because, like, I can't get a pet because, like, my life can have a pet, and it could,
Yeah,
but I don't want it to.
right.
That's why people with dogs live a really long time because their dog
Yeah.
is so annoying that it makes them go out for and I'm out on our path, without a dog, but
Mhm.
I can tell you 90% of those people out there are with their dogs.
Yeah.
So you have to go out a couple of times well, depending on your dog, but
Yeah, I guess.
you have to go out, you know,
Such a good
and
point. Yeah.
it makes you do that. That's the only reason I would want a dog. I have to make friends with people who like have a dog. We're like, hey, your dog wanna go on a run with me? Like,
Yeah. Can I
that's it.
borrow your
And
dog?
I was at same sort of thing. Like in my 20s, I would like go really, really hard.
Mm.
Actually, even into my 30s a bit. I would say 2 years ago when I started learning about women's hormones and having balance, and I read a really good book called "Fix Your Period" by Nicole Jardim, and it was specifically about natural ways of maintaining your hormones and
Mm.
what signs and symptoms like thinning hair or like having regular yeast infections or whatever that means
Ah,
estrogen is high, so
yeah.
specific like problems, and then how do you fix it or what food you should eat up while you have PMDD or PMS symptoms, like
Mm. Mhm.
if you're feeling very like you're reaching for salty and sugary foods. So what you should eat is like sweet potatoes and, beans and lentils. So you're,
Mhm.
you're not craving those, stuff that doesn't actually help you and it
Yeah.
increases your hormones even more. So knowledge is power. I
Yeah.
love, I
Yeah.
love learning about that stuff. But I feel like when you have, like you said, you were learning about dementia, like when you have an issue that you're trying to solve, that is great motivation
Mm.
to
Yeah.
take care of yourself. You're like, I
Yeah.
don't, you know. So my mom passed away when she was 56. So like but of course she smoked and she had lung cancer, but that's not the
Mm.
only, issue.
Mhm.
And so I think it motivates you to like how can I live the longest? How can I take care of myself? How can I live my best life? Because obviously moments are
Mm.
fickle and fleeting and we only have so
Yeah.
many of them. So um I was at that point where I was like killing myself exercising, and then I would crash and I couldn't function throughout the whole rest of the day because I was like going so hard. And so I read that book about, women's hormones specifically. And she said, unless you're used to high cardio, your body's like going to give you the opposite release of the stuff. So
Yeah.
I like started really, instead of running really hard, but like taking walk breaks and like going with what I could, not like, you know, running a marathon or training for, that's not for me.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that's not where I'm going to
Right. Me too.
prioritize my time. Now I like carry seeds in my pocket. I'm like feeding the birds. Like I literally did that this morning, and they come to my hand, and like I have a routine because I think it's absolutely magical that they will they'll come without seeds, and then I was like,
Yeah.
I gotta
You're
bring
like
my
a
friends
Disney
some seeds.
princess.
I feel like I'm teasing them. I'm just standing there expecting to be surrounded, and they do, and they're cute little chickadees, and it means a lot. It like has some symbolic meaning for me, but like I run to that spot because I like feel so good there, and I thank the Mother Earth, and I always think of my mom because of the chickadees. And so like what is going to fill your cup? And I love yoga and dark spaces because that like shuts down your mind, and it's totally for you.
Yeah.
So you have to find those things that like, you know, you're not we're not saying to, you know, push past what you can do. It's just like your thing for you, and it's yours, and no one, you're making that time for you, and no one's going to take it away from you. Like that, you know, book it into your Google Calendar, have a family shared calendar, whatever it is, like write it down. Oh, I wanted to talk about, sorry, we're running out of time, but this is a great time of year. I know I talked about like why I do what I do, but like I did something really funny this year with my goals. I wrote them out, and that's a very, every time I write them out, they're very realistic. I really always achieve them. Like I rarely, like, you know, one of my goals actually took me 4 years longer than I thought, but that's okay. I kept writing it down, and I finally did it. But this year I took them with my sons. I wrote a letter to Santa, and I thought that was really cute. And I put it in the mail. I was like, "Dear Santa, I would like this year, all of these things." And it was just like a fun thing to do. And it was a fun thing to do with the kids. And I will probably get a letter back, you know, like that all
I
the
hope
kids
so.
get. Yeah.
It's Santa writes you back.
Yes, Santa will write me back, because I don't know if you've done that with your kids. You always get a letter back, but and you don't have to post. You don't even have to pay for postage. So this is a free, goal oriented, right? Ask Santa for what you want. Which
all the moms are gonna write Santa.
yeah, I feel like this should be a new movement every year, right? Santa. What you want. And
Santa
see
the
if you
life
get
coach,
it. Yeah, I think it's fun, and it's cool, and it takes like the pressure off of it being like this daunting, like, oh, I wrote those goals down. And my tip for reaching those goals, and I want to hear yours, is the tiny little things every day toward your goals. Because if you're like, it becomes very overwhelming when you ask for those things. But like, I wrote my book and I wrote it in like 15 to 20 minutes of writing a day. And then of course the editing process like took a little bit more dedication, but it was just like mind dumps. Like I thought about, like I'd be running in those like downtimes of my mind, or I'd be doing yoga and I was like, oh, I have a story, an idea for a chapter. And I'd like run home or make a voice memo and like write it out, you know? So that, and then it was just there. And then I just ran back to whatever I was doing. So just sneaking it in the windows of your time in your day, you know, when you've eaten lunch and the one kid has gone down for a nap and your other kid can have quiet time, that's your time to do your thing, you know?
Yeah, totally. I really like that you talk about like putting it into your day, because I think that it's not necessarily about the goal. It's about who we're being to achieve that goal. And first of all, our goals have to be like part of that bigger picture if they're going to motivate us. Like I had a vision for my bedroom. It was like full of clutter. It was crazy. It was like we had ripped up the carpets. It was just gross. And I was like actively decluttering regularly. I was like moving stuff around because I was so motivated by where we were going to go with it. But if you asked me to go like into the laundry room and declutter, I'm like, I don't know what this space is. Like, I don't know. No thing. I'll shut the door and leave it at that. So it is like such a great thing to know specifically where am I going? Like, what do I want to feel? What do I want this area of my life to feel like, to look like? And what do I have to do to be the person that gets there? Like, who do I have to be now to get there in the long run? And I think that just kind of can like break it down. It's a habit. Like, what kind of habit do I want to develop? What will get me where I want to go? And make your habits approachable. Like, meet yourself where you're at. I always say on my podcast, small things matter. Like, the small things matter so much. There's something called compound effect, where if you're doing the same thing consistently each day, it actually grows exponentially. And that can be for negative, like habits as well, right?
Mm,
So if every day, Brandy, you're like brain dumping your great ideas, like you're brainstorming, at the end of a month, you're going to have this huge collection of really great nuggets that you've put in there because you developed the habit. I'm going to stop what I'm doing. I'm going to put it in my notes and I'm going to carry on. Like, that's such a good habit. So don't wait for like a habit to just magically appear into your lifestyle. You have to make a little bit of room and keep it simple. We get so stuck in all or nothing thinking, like, oh, I'm going to write a book, so I have to
yes.
spend this much time every week. Like, you'll never do it because where are you going to find this magical amount of time in your life? But if you can say, I want to write a book, I'm going to spend every time something comes into my mind, and then in the morning, like you're reading every morning, like that's low, like low commitment. You can include it. Start as you mean to go along. That's like a saying I've always thought since my kids were small. Start as you mean to go along. Like, what's going to fit into my life as it is? Where can I stack in some extra habits? We hear so much. You kind of mentioned earlier about like the woman's brain, because we hear so much about productivity from men, white men, who may be single or they probably aren't the primary caregiver, and they're telling us how to be more productive in all of their life hacks. And it's so frustrating.
I know,
But
Atomic Habits. I was like, that's cool for you, man.
yeah, good for
Single
you.
man.
Get up in power
Like,
hour every morning. Yeah.
obviously, like, I don't know where he is now. I think his name is James or something, and it's a very
Mhm.
popular book. But honestly, I
Yeah.
didn't even get through it. I was like, I get what you mean. I'm already doing this, but like, that is a very easy, thing for you to do. It wasn't
To
in,
do in your
a
life. Yeah.
perspective that I could relate to because,
Yeah.
I was writing my own book at the time and it almost pissed me off. I was like,
Yeah, right.
so I kind of wrote the book I needed to read almost, or I did,
Totally.
a
Yeah.
realistic, honest version of like life. Like, this is the, like, this is the authentic version of, how life works. Seeing your everyday ordinary
Mhm.
is extraordinary because that's everyone. Everyone
Mm.
has shit that happens in their day. Like, not once did that mention like the crappy part of everyone's like
Yeah.
struggles. And we have struggles and we have loss and we have um like challenging lows and we have like, I didn't lie. Like, I have
Mm.
extreme lows and I have, and as women, we all know when those are probably going to come. Like,
Yeah,
so
right. Yeah.
I hate it
It's
when there's a
very
trip
important.
book and I look at like my menstrual cycle and I was like, I'm going to be so tired on this trip and like
I
not
love
wanting
that you
to be
say that.
there at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
Like,
I
I'm
have a
just going to want
spreadsheet
to
too. Yeah. It is, especially when you are like, okay, I'm feeling like I just want to burn everything down and fight with everyone. And then you can be like, oh, in 2 days, I'm going to get my period. Like, I can just, hide in the
I warn
bedroom.
everyone. I warn everyone. Like, just don't,
Yes.
just
Just know
mommy's
it's not you.
mommy's not, yeah. And like, I warn my husband like 10 days, all the days. I'm like,
Yeah.
just so you know. Yeah.
Wide radius. Give me this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am
It's so
annoyed
important.
because,
Yeah.
yeah.
That changed
And
my
it
life
does. It gives
learning
me
that.
leeway. I think communication, you talked about right off the bat with your partner,
Mm.
communicating, and like 2 days before mine this month, I was like bawling. And he's like, okay,
Yeah.
but are you
He's
sure it's
looking at the
not just
calendar.
because,
Yeah.
yeah, no, he's like, you're doing a good job. You're doing great.
Yeah.
Wasn't this your best year ever? We're just
Aw.
like, I'm failing.
But for
Failing.
2 days, you're
Listen,
like,
but
everything
yeah,
sucks.
I'm failing at everything. He's like, this was your best year ever. I'm not
Yeah.
making it happen. Like, yeah, anyways, it's almost
Yeah.
comical, but it's still yeah, like we're going on a big birthday. It's his 40th, and we're like going to a
Oh,
nice hotel, and I'm like, I'm gonna be like wanting to eat salt and sweets and just like watch Bridgerton. Like,
right.
I'm not gonna wanna be what we're like, yes,
What's the
Oilers!
vibe?
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not gonna. We're like going with 14 other people, which we have never done before. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have to really
Whoa.
like pull it together.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can usually pull it together for like something that's all about me. Like if I'm giving like a talk or like or if it's all about
Where
me,
you
I'm like,
have
I
to
can
for
do
yourself.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I hopefully will pull it all together. Okay,
Yeah.
we have to go because I could talk to you for a really long time. I really
Yes.
enjoyed this.
Yeah.
Thank
Me
you so
too.
much.
Yeah.
What is your podcast so everyone can find you there? Because you have like 17 to like 20-minute advice little pods, which are great, manageable, doable in a day.
Yeah. It's like by moms for moms. Yeah. It's called
Yeah.
Simple on Purpose. Yeah. And it's all about like decluttering your home, your heart, your mind, your life. Just simplify it and show up on purpose. That's really kind of like simple on purpose is to simplify and then show up for your life on purpose instead of your life on autopilot. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you ever bring on guests or no?
I don't usually. It's just like
It's
another
hard to
thing I
fit
would
that
have to
in.
manage. Yeah.
Yeah. And edit. I don't edit, by the
Edit,
way.
right?
There's nothing will be cut out.
No, I love that. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it shouldn't have to feel so like polished and edited. And it's just another hurdle to actually doing the work, right? That's how I
Yeah.
feel.
It's a lot of time for me to host guests on the podcast, but there's more
Mhm.
positives than anything else. It's like connecting with
Mm.
people that I would have never chatted to. And I think
Yeah.
that's so cool. Even if it's not like the number one thing I do, it's just like
Right. Yeah.
it's a wonderful, wonderful privilege and tool.
Mm.
And is it the same? You're the same on Instagram, Simple on Purpose?
Yeah. .ca. Simple on
Dot
purpose.
.ca.
.ca. Yeah.
Yeah. So everyone can find Shawna there, and I'm sure you people reach out and you message them, and yeah,
Totally.
and you have a service that you offer. So check that out, and thank you so much. And we'll chat soon. And
yeah, I really enjoyed it.
I was like, I want you on ASAP, and I need this. People need it. So thank you so much for being so last minute. And we'll chat soon. Two Canadian moms.
I love it. Yeah. Thanks, Brandy.
Have a good day. Eat some meals.
Yeah. Okay, I will. Yeah.
All right. See you later.
Okay, see you. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.